And now we have two excellent guests joining us to dive into the latest military purge in communist China and what it signals. Michael Lucci is the founder and CEO of State Armor, and Nathan Su is an investigative reporter for the Epoch Times. Thank you both so much for joining us. Michael, starting with you, diving right in here, how are you reading this latest series of investigations, purges in China, this time to the country's top generals?
There are two things I'd say about this. First, there is real tension between Chairman Xi and his military. Obviously, he's purging nearly everybody in his leadership of the military. The reasons for that, I think that there's a lot to debate and consider around the reasons why there's that tension. But I would flag the second point I'd like to make here is there's pretty obvious propaganda being promulgated within the United States, in particular through the Wall Street Journal, about what might be happening in the inner circle of Xi Jinping. They're saying that he's selling nuclear secrets to the United States and some other conjecture like this. The lines in the Wall Street Journal are being rejected by pretty much everyone who's analyzing these issues. So there's real tension between Xi and his military leaders, but a lot of the narrative that's being seeded across the United States seems to actually be used to benefit Xi Jinping himself to consolidate power.
And Nathan, you have a unique perspective on this, having come from a military family in China. Now with your reporting work to expose the Chinese regime's influence around the world, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I think Xi Jinping is actually trying to replace the most of the Chinese government and party and military officials. That's what he's trying to do. What the situation facing him, it's very much similar to what's facing Joseph Stalin in the 1930s. You know, Stalin facing a lot of people that's left from the Tsar's era, while Xi Jinping is facing pretty much every aspect of a Chinese government, party, and military official who climb up the power ladder in the past 40 or to 50 years of time after China opened to the free market and start their market economy. And in the eyes of Xi Jinping, and they are all corrupted to a certain extent, while Xi Jinping trying to lead China going back to the fundamental communist ideology. He trying to replace a lot of them. So that's why we have seen in the last few years, Xi Jinping trying to actually encourage the fight, the power struggles among officials in different factions in China, either government or party or the military. So he can find a reason to either replace them or purge them as quick as possible.
And Michael, we've seen how certain nations put trust in negotiations with the Chinese regime, and some speculate that it could become the next future global leader. Do purges like this of two Chinese generals serve as a reality check of how unstable China's future under this regime really is?
Well, Tiffany, it's actually a really incredible example. So you have the Prime Minister of Canada talking about making a trade deal with Xi Jinping, as he is, as you're noting, purging his military leaders. But this is nothing new. If you look at the track record of communist China since just the COVID era, they unleashed a pandemic on everybody. Wolf warrior diplomacy, hoarding PPE, attacking Taiwan, trade war all across the board. So they've been the source of global instability. They backed Putin's invasion of Ukraine. They backed the leaders of Iran. They backed the leader of Venezuela. So pretty much everybody who's causing trouble throughout the world is being backed by communist China. And as we're mentioning here, they are purging their own leaders at the same time. So it's actually quite insane for global leaders, such as the Prime Minister of Canada, to turn to communist China to make some sort of trade deal, which China has never honored any of their trade deals anyways. But this is occurring amidst a time of tremendous turmoil within China, and as the United States is fortifying against China across the globe.
And Nathan, your thoughts on if this latest purge is a reality check for people in countries who might see as communist China as a future global leader?
Well, I think that in the leaders of the Western world, we need to clearly have a clear mind that we need to treat China as our enemy, not competitor. China has been in war with us, the unrestricted warfare, ever since the 90s. And while we have been dealing with China using the rules, regulations, legality, all these things. You cannot rely on these things to win a war. That just doesn't work.
And Michael, how should the U.S. be responding to this? Does it change the U.S. approach to relations with China?
I think that the United States should prepare for China to start a war in the Indo-Pacific. And then President Trump's national defense strategy points to exactly that, wanting to deter war through strength. And most specifically, he says he wants a denial defense on the first island chain. So that would include from Korea to Japan to Taiwan to the Philippines. So a denial defense so that China cannot invade one of those neighbors, cannot break out from the first island chain, and cannot really disrupt all global trade that goes through the Straits of Taiwan, South China Sea, and otherwise. So I think that President Trump is putting pressure on a lot of China's allies, obviously Venezuela, Iran. President Trump is working with NATO to fortify the Arctic, that's Greenland. President Trump's trying to get back control of the Panama Canal, putting trade restrictions on China and trying to get our allies to do the same. So I think that what he's doing is generally the right thing, which is get supply chains that are separate from China, get allies ready to deal with China, and really fortify the first island chain against a potential invasion by China.
And expanding on that, Nathan, this is seen as the highest profile purge to date of senior military leaders inside China. It also involves the last two who had real war experience. How could that impact a potential Taiwan invasion?
Well, I think what Xi Jinping trying to look at, it's not seniority and experience, and that's in the past that he has to choose, these people with top seniority, top, more experienced, but he actually doesn't like them. So he find a way to try to replace them as much as possible, as quick as possible. It's really so after all these seniorities, experience not counting, then all these people being removed, he will be able to reach out to the people who will really loyal and follow, his direction. So I think in the next 5 years, will be living in the most dangerous time window that very much possible, the highest possibility that the war that will break out in the Western Pacific, And I think after 2030, that possibility average actually will start going down. And after 2035, because China's the population aging really fast and their economy really go down to the toilet really fast. So I think after 2035, the possibility of going to have a war with China is going to be less and less. But the next 5 years is the most difficult time we have to deal with. And then we need to make our military men and women in service better equipped, better trained, and fully ready so we can defend the peace and try to avoid a war.
A lot at stake for sure. Michael Lucci, Nathan Su, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.